Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, I hope that you had a good lunch break and returned to the afternoon session with sharpened interest in continuing our discussion of today. The afternoon online session starts with addressing how election and campaign fraud and mismanagement takes place in reality. And in this first panel of the afternoon session, we have two Hungarian speakers, one of whom, Mr. Sándor Lederer, is present in the room in person. He is the executive director of K-Monitor watchdog organization. We have with us Mr. Zalán Zubor online, an investigative journalist of átlátszó.hu, and if I'm not mistaken, we should be having equally online Ms. Lucia Vilimovská from Transparency International Czechia, so our partner organization in the Czech Republic, and Mr. Wojciech Przybylski from Poland, the editor of Visegrad Insight. I do not see them on screen until now. Okay, I see them now. Welcome and thank you for joining the afternoon session. As this panel is addressing mismanagement and fraud in practice, in the first round of questions, I invite the panelists to give an intro on their respective experience accumulated in their fieldwork, how election fraud, mismanagement, campaign irregularities, interference take place in their respective jurisdiction. May we start with you, Lucia, to have an overview of what's happening in Czechia. And just one last sentence before jumping to that. Equally, and just as with the morning sessions, we will have a Mentimeter exercise, but this time this will not take place at the end of the discussion, but right following the round of intros. So the panel is yours, Lucia, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Hello to everyone. I'm Lucia Vilimovská. I'm a project manager in Transparency International Czech Republic. Transparency International Czech Republic has been active in the field of political financing and elections for quite some while. We've been monitoring pretty much every elections in Czech Republic since 2012, and I had the pleasure to be witnessing or part of the monitoring for the past 10 years. So I will share some experiences from what we've seen around here. I would like to start by what are the current trends, because we pretty much moved away from the fraud in a sense of vote buying. There were some notorious cases of trucks loaded with bags of potatoes and pretty much people selling off their vote for the bag of potatoes. But these are cases that happened maybe 10, 15 years ago, and the trends moved somewhere else. We've been seeing some cases of changes in permanent residency, where tens of voters registered pretty much last minute in some small municipality, trying to sway the voting result. But these cases seem that pretty easy to spot if the municipal authority acts fast enough. And what we've seen around that if these cases are flagged, then the police can act pretty quickly. So the trends we've witnessed in the past years are, I would say, more of irregularities than frauds. And I would like to flag a couple of them. What we've seen is that the political parties tend to spend the money before the election campaigns officially start, which is because in Czech Republic, the official election campaign starts by the president actually announcing the date of the elections. And that's when the spending starts to count, and we have caps for the spendings. So especially the bigger parties or the bigger coalitions tend to spend the money even before the campaign officially starts, and therefore pushing more and more money into the elections and making what we see, the ever-going campaigns, because the campaigns pretty much never stops now. Another trend, what we've seen for the past maybe 2 elections, is what we call undisclosed coalitions. So the legal threshold for one party, one political entity is 5% in the parliamentary elections. For the official coalition of 2 parties, it's 8% of votes. And for 3 parties, it's 11. For some, it's obviously pretty tough to cross this threshold. So they've been finding ways how to get around this. And some figured that if they set up a completely new political entity, then they can just nominate candidates from several different parties. The only obstacle is exactly the funding, and if they actually go to the parliament, then there is some sort of trickery in how to redistribute the money that is given by the state to the successful political parties back to the respective political parties. So it's creating a bit of a, I would say, mess. And we see it quite problematic for the transparency of the political process. We've had quite a strong political fight about postal voting from abroad. Some political parties tried to block this with a narrative that the elections are going to be rigged, drawing the narratives from the US and other countries. We actually saw a survey which was done at the beginning of 2025, because then in October 2025, we had our last parliamentary elections. And in the survey, 60% of the voters were worried that the postal vote will negatively impact the fairness of the elections. And then we actually saw the first postal vote in October, and there was no mismanagement or fraud detected, thankfully. But the political parties managed, especially some more anti-systemic parties, managed to get this narrative quite far. And the same survey asked also, like, what are the other areas that the voters feared that could manipulate the vote, and almost 80% of the respondents said that they were fearing manipulations and lies spread through the social media, which is an area which we all know that the irregularities happen quite a lot there. There were some strong political attacks on competition, pushing the limits of hate speech and free speech, and the debate is quite omnipresent still. I would like to also present one case and explain a bit one specific case of financing fraud, which actually came out just a couple of days ago. That's we actually, my colleague commented this for a media, and it's where one of the far-right parties, which is currently part of the governing coalition, apparently received 2 big donations from what officially appears as Ukrainian companies. But the journalist tracked the owners of the companies, and both of them claimed that they had no idea that this money went to a political party, that just some acquaintance asked them to move the money as a technical favor. And when they learned that the party that they provided the money with is quite pro-Russian, they were even horrified by the fact. So it appeared that this is a clear case of some sort of a white horse scenario. Transparency Czech Republic has been actually flagging this topic in the past, I think, 2 election cycles. And this gets me maybe to the point where I can say that with the monitoring that we've been doing in Czech Republic, we've had for the every elections we set some set of criteria. It ranges pretty much between 10 to 7 specific criteria where we flag what should be done by the parties to go a bit beyond the legal requirements, because to be fair, Czech legislation on political financing in elections are quite robust and quite solid, but we still see space for the parties to do better. And we raised the issue of tracking the origins of the money as one of the most important issues for the party to be focusing on in the past years. Maybe the last note is what also we saw is quite functioning in the Czech Republic, is that the CSOs and the media and the investigative journalists, they, in front of pretty much every elections, that they formed quite a strong cooperation. We've had a group of CSOs focusing like first as watchdogs as we are, but also focusing on disinformation and other areas important for the transparency of the elections. And we found that this improves our reactivity if anything comes up.
Thank you very much. As second of our speakers, I invite you, Wojciech, to present what's your experience regarding elections, fraud, mismanagement, and abuse in Poland.
Thank you. And I will relate mostly to the research covered also in Visegrad Insight. But among others, this research, I will shamelessly recommend my wife's book, which is upcoming, on the informal power comparison of Poland and Hungary, which I think brings a more systematic approach to understanding these practices that we're trying to identify, flag, and understand. Speaking of Poland, specifically Polish experience, we have over the past 10, 11 years paid particular focus, particular attention, and we had more focus on electoral fraud because it seemed to be that irregularities, like Lucia was mentioning at the beginning of her presentation, were more dominant than systemic fraud, an approach that would show a certain dysfunctionality of democratic practice. And what happened in 2015 was monopolization of malpractice that scaled up across the country. Now, I wanted to highlight, first of all, for those who are also listening to us, that like in many other democracies, we have different types of elections. And in Poland, those elections, in particular the national level elections and the local level elections, demonstrate different type of fraud, sometimes of similar nature. But if there is fraud or there is irregularity, it also has a bit different nature. For instance, in case of Poland overall, for the national elections and presidential elections, we have extremely politicized media that are being reported by numerous reports, including OEC reporting on electoral fairness and electoral integrity overall. And they are being documented across other forms. Politicized media, sometimes captured public media over the past years, have had a certain impact and had a certain importance for national elections, but they are never nearly as important, this irregularity, as the local level capture. Because across the multitude of different polities, different local constituencies, we have a systemic problem dispersed in a decentralized way of let's call it local autocracies, in which mayors or public authorities of centralized nature have a very strong influence on the media agenda through direct control and clientelism, essentially. Even if these are private media, they are financially so dependent on the sources of income coming from the public authorities through simply public advertisement that on the local level, which is not being seen and observed, and I think this is something new for such a conference to say, they are being multiplied into local, insignificant on a global practice, but very significant on the local practice irregularity. That is first part, which I wanted to highlight and mention. On the national level, until 2015, which marked the moment in which Polish political system designed also consultation in a constitutional way to nearly make impossible a simple majority, has been overridden by electoral democratic decisions of the voters to and through a mismanagement of one of the parties, the left, which did not make it, and their votes were lost they didn't meet the threshold, and their votes were lost, and then they amplified the victory of the dominant party. It created a monopoly of power that lasted for nearly 2 terms, and it escalated the malpractice that I just described is being visible on the local level to the national level. And over the past 8 years, 2015 until 2023, we had a clear abuse of systemic dysfunctionalities in the Polish political system that were that I could primarily attribute to the electoral and democratic decision, which was in the first place not fraudulent in itself. But that decision has amplified this malpractice that, again, was attached to the political clientelism with the use of state-owned companies and state control of the media that introduced the scale never seen before, otherwise and before checked by democratic mechanism and dispersion of the kind of competitions of different stakeholders and parties. And not to say this was perfect situation before, but this has all of a sudden amplified. This level of centralization of power has amplified the existing dysfunctionalities within the system, like clientelism, political clientelism, and included also state jobs, state companies related patronage that related to employing people, simply being able to sustain their political activity at a much higher level than before through state jobs. But also they were able, or this moment was enabling certain new types of malpractice that is connected to the digital age. And I don't mean immediately social media platforms, political advertising, but I mean also the methods of financing, online campaigning, that around the same time, have escaped the scrutiny of both public authorities and also the civil society watchdogs and networks, only to be revealed later as, you could say, a disruption and innovation of the democratic electoral system, but also financed in a way that was discovered too late to matter for the respective electoral cycle. What I mean by this, the example comes from 2021 reporting on the presidential campaign, so a year after presidential race was complete in Poland. It was discovered that the company that was a company of a spin doctor campaigning for the presidential re-election of the incumbent President Duda has been receiving also over 1 million zloty, and that was documented mistake in reporting, mistake of the electoral campaign that shouldn't release the information that would be incriminating. It was documented by invoices found in this reporting that demonstrated there was a channel of funds for otherwise used by the government and designed by the government to fund innovation, startups, venture capital type of high risk investment that essentially meant also money burning for the purpose of fueling online campaigning on behalf of the pro-governmental candidate. So that level of malpractice connected to the digital age, again, clearly demonstrated in other cases, has been made possible for also because there were schemes, or there was such a dominant position of the party and no control, no checks, political checks and balances, not the institutional checks and balances, that would make such irregularities impossible otherwise. But of course, simply speaking, the type of abuse that has appeared at the same time was connected to lack of reporting and also lack of reporting standards in online campaigning, in the type of political advertisement that has been later scrutinized by the European Union regulations and has been also limited or simply completely withdrawn recently by social media platforms. And that had a tremendous impact, hard to measure, but clearly visible in forms of promoting candidates, but also derogatory campaign, or you couldn't call them well, if some people consider disinformation a banned word, cognitive warfare operations during the campaign that again utilized trolling, utilized the types of techniques. Domestically, we observe a number of other elections continuously throughout the electoral cycles, and they've been the big challenges. Other than that, on votes counting, transparency of ballots, a number of you would say typical transition age problems, or since Poland was not performing badly, so this element of miracles over ballot boxes, quote unquote, were not frequent. They were present, and people were alerted by such a phenomena by the virtue of political discourse. Both the government and opposition was paying attention and elevating this. But also, we have observed that such narrative has been mobilizing grassroots and watchdog organizations to be active as election observers. And the previous government, the majoritarian government of Poland, have actually introduced bigger toolbox, so to say, for participation in election observance, whether it was with good intentions. That's something to be discussed. But clearly, it was an improvement once you wanted to use it for public participation, observance, and monitoring for transparency of the electoral process. Because I started with media, I would finish with one remark also, which has had systemic nature. It is nothing new for Hungary, but clearly we have seen such attempts to have a media takeover in a similar salami tactics like Hungary has observed since 2010. So first there was a public media capture that was primarily done for electoral purposes, and it was creating a taxpayer public tube for one side of the political scene, creating also again derogatory campaigning message for the opposition, which is clearly a systemic malpractice. But then there were attempts at purchasing and capturing of regional media that took effectively place when the local the network of regional media owned by Passauer Press has been sold to the state oil company, the biggest in Poland. So comparing to Hungarian MOL, PKN Orlen was the purchaser. And that had allegedly two elements of the typical fraud. One is what everybody more or less know. It is about putting the journalist sphere, the media sphere under control, under type of propaganda control. But more importantly, that we highlighted it also in our reporting, it was also about data mining. Because the type of, again, referring to the digital age malpractice, the type of irregularity is also access to data by the political stakeholders. If you are able to access enough of big data to design your campaigning, then you're creating an imbalanced playing field, something that typically escapes the analysis of malpractice. In the case of Poland, there was a clear attempt of acquiring also a large data set of subscribers and essentially users, online users of the media that has been taken over, to be able to utilize it for big data driven type of political campaigning. Yeah, I'll stop here probably because there's more to tell, and I'm also keen to listen to excellent co-panelists.
Thank you very much. And as third speaker, I invite Zolán Zubor to give an overview of how irregularities happen in the field. And I think it's a good connection to jump on the next to closing remark by Wojciech, which, if I'm correctly interpreting, was about counting ballots happening more or less professionally and not being manipulated, at least not to the extent and not in the nature which we suppose happens in Russia or in Belarusia. And our general impression, at least my take on that.
What a comparison.
Yeah, yes. My take as regards Hungary is that the election management so far used to be a professional and neutral service offered by the government, but Zolán, as an investigative journalist working for átlátszó.hu, which has already on multiple occasions uncovered irregularities, may have different views on this topic. So please, Zolán, give us an overview on that.
Thank you for inviting me. So in Hungary, the saying about election fraud nowadays is that the vast majority of election fraud doesn't happen on election day, but many, many days before it. When people say this, they are talking both about the nomination process, which is now very ripe with different types of fraud, and also setting the field for the partisan candidate, which as a playing field is absolutely not level right now. I think there was one of the European Union's organizations who monitor the elections 4 years ago said that in Hungary there are free elections, but they are not fair elections, which I think is very accurate description. I would like to talk about basically two kinds of fraud that we at our outlet has both been monitoring. The type of fraud that happens during election day and that happens before that. So the first type of flow that happens before election day, that happens during election day, as I said before, is by far the minority and the less impactful for election results. But they have also been detected in many times. So this kind of fraud includes tactics such as chain voting, such as vote buying, voter intimidation, and the transportation of voters to the ballots. Now, this type of fraud is overwhelmingly impacting populations in deep poverty. These are tactics to be used against people who are at the mercy of mostly local power brokers, such as mayors or the leaders of government offices. And in such places, the voters, such people often have tools to blackmail voters to vote as the way they want. So that is mostly financial ways. So in the last elections, for example, we have detected at átlátszó, we have detected chain voting, which is a tactic where there's a group of people who are organized to take part in voter fraud. There is one person who is checking what party they vote for, and they are basically given the first person in the chain takes the ballot. He takes it to the person who is organizing the fraud. He fills it and then hands it to the next person. And The way this can be detected is that there's one ballot missing. So, for example, there's an empty envelope inside the box, but there is always a list of people who voted, who have been checked for their vote, and there is one person suddenly missing, but there is either a missing ballot or there's a +1 ballot. So this is how this can be detected by the people who are by the vote counters. But the problem is that the majority of fraud doesn't really happen inside the polling place. So the people who are officially in charge of keeping the election legal, they are all inside and they cannot leave during the day. But in reality, the fraud happens outside. And we also, in the last national election, we documented similar cases where, for example, politicians are, or people working for politicians are transporting voters and to the ballot places, and they are pressuring them to vote for their preferred candidate. So in many of these extremely poor areas on election day, you can see very elevated traffic of vans and buses, or sometimes just larger cars, where they transport families, and in some cases you can see that they are coming with prepared papers. This could be like written instructions. This could be a pre-filled voting sheets. This one happened where we filmed this happening, where there's one family exiting the van, going to the voting place to cast a ballot, and they were carrying some paper with them that it looked like a ballot. Unfortunately, on the photo that our colleagues were able to take, it's not clear what actually this paper is. So, for example, in that case, there was a report to the police for election fraud, and the investigation was inconclusive because they said they cannot really prove fraud. And kind of a softer version of this tactic is when there is some kind of public event, usually close to the voting place, and there people get different different like products. Sometimes money, sometimes it's food, and they are influenced to vote for a certain candidate. I think the turning point for this kind of fraud was actually 2013, because in that year there was an overhaul of the national election laws, and one of the things that happened was they legalized or they removed something called campaign silence. This was basically a law saying that before and during election day, any kind of campaigning is forbidden. So, for example, on that day, even news media, or like at least television and radio, couldn't report on political events because that would have violated campaign silence. And it also meant that any kind of event that could have influenced people with, for example, public appearance of a candidate or other politician couldn't be held legally. Another thing that happened in 2013 was that they basically legalized taking photos of your vote. Because in the past, the law was not completely clear on on that issue, if it is really legal or not. But there were decisions in the past that if this is done on in any ways that can influence decision making, either by violating campaign silence law or by or because it was done under pressure to prove to somebody that you voted for the right party, then it was illegal. And in the next campaign law, this section was explicitly taken out. So really in 2013, it has become much easier to commit election fraud. And one very concerning development in the recent two elections, which was the 2022 national election and local and EU election 2 years later, was that there hasn't been any fruitful reports of election fraud. So in 2019, for example, there was a lot of reports which led to the repeat of votes in certain places. But in the last few elections, there hasn't been such a case, and it's not necessarily because the elections actually became much cleaner. There's another. Now I'm going to talk a bit about the fraud that's committed before the elections. So one of them is the fraud related to the nomination process. Nomination process in Hungary is very easy to manipulate, and this has been an issue for a very long time. One of the big problems is that people who want to run for an office, not necessarily win, but just to run, to be a representative, have a financial incentive to do so. Because, for example, if you are able to collect enough signatures to get on the ballot, then you are entitled to basically a kind of campaign funding. This is for a political party is a very large amount, and but even if you are running as an individual candidate, even then you are entitled to a certain amount, which is not insignificant. So you can buy a pretty nice car from it, for example. And what you need to get on the ballot is in as an individual candidate is just 500 signatures from locals in your constituency. So this is not really impossible to collect if you are really able to put some effort into it. So, for example, in the current elections, there are some places where there are like well over like 12 candidates who were able to run. Most of them are not affiliated with any parties, and nothing is really known about them. But it's very likely that they are running for office because of this financial incentive. This kind of fraud is much more common in local elections. So I will say that this type of very explicit fraud is not committed on such a level that it can decide the national election. But at local elections, so for in the election of mayors and local representatives, this can be very decisive, and because of that, there is, I would say, is more common because there is, it can have more stakes in a sense. So, for example, this here there was one very small village where there was a repeat of the election of the special local election several times. And on that election, there was at one point 77 candidates on the ballot. And most of them were basically fake candidates, because one group who was trying to get re-elected was, they already believed that they have their base and they wanted to divide the rest of the vote. And others registered for, again, for financial reasons. Others were, a lot of them were paid to register by this kind of incumbent mayor and representatives who were running. So similar cases were more common in the local level elections. The same can be said for things like chain voting and direct vote buying. There is a lot of types of, yeah.
Excuse me, Zoran, I don't want to be impolite by interrupting you, but we still have a Mentimeter exercise in front of us to involve our audience, and I would wish to pass the floor to Sándor on to discuss other aspects of campaign irregularities. I definitely will give you a chance to go on, but this time I would like to invite Sándor to speak of different forms of irregularities in the Hungarian campaigning and election framework, focusing more on K-Monitor's expertise regarding election campaign overspending and financial resources used for campaigning.
Thank you, Miklós. Thank you, everyone. And I hope I'll be able to continue some of what Zalán has started to talk about. So I think a very important thing he mentioned was that fraud most often doesn't happen on election day, but the period before. And I would even extend this period further. I think if we talk about Hungary, what's very important to note is that actually the election campaign starts the day after the elections for the next election. So I would say you can clearly state for the Orbán government that his mission to actually not only preserve political power, but practically change the entire system with his cronies in economy, his people in media, that's actually a political finance project as well. And therefore, if you talk about these kind of abuses, it really starts, or it became an essential of their governance, and all the elements when you talk about corruption in Hungary are very much connected to that. So basically public funds turn to cronies. Of course, they are then returning that money in various ways to fund government closed media, to invest into proxies that later on support the campaign. Legislation is tailored in general to favor the government. Of course, this also affects elections. There is a very clear pressure on people in public administration that if they're openly disagreeing with the government, even as a citizens, or they speak up on private profiles, they're easily dismissed. So this type of atmosphere, this chilling effect that restrains people from being active citizens, to engage in civil society, to participate in politics as members of parties, or even consider to run at some point, this chilling effects really limits anybody outside of the government circles who wouldn't in a normal country have the idea to do so, and only those who really are either have a much higher level of courage or have their own agenda are the ones that at the end run. So I just want to say that when we talk about all this, it really starts a long way before the campaign. And of I want to, so I could talk endlessly about the general framework, but I want to limit myself to what Miklos was asking about, the election context, which even that starts before the campaign period. But obviously, I think financially the biggest disadvantage is the access to media and funds in the media. So in Hungary, the public media is an entire propaganda machine with extreme amount of funding, something that is in itself way, and many times, 50 times the amount of money that political parties can spend on elections. Similarly, not only government media or public media plays a role because they are, let's say, have somewhat limited access to the general population, but government propaganda through billboards ads, to social media ads for a long time, and state advertisement in the media is similarly creating a total unlevel playing field. Again, the amount spent there way exceed what, officially parties can invest into politics. So the dimensions are very different between what a normal party can afford funding their campaigns, funding their operations, and what the state can afford and really does afford for the sake of constantly influencing voters and having a say. And Wojciech was mentioning local media. I think that's also a case here. Either you have practically media deserts where there is no real local media, so it's national media that people are listening to, or in many cases, if there's local media, it's totally in the hands of those in power, and the local sector is so dependent financially on the national sectors that mayors who want to get any type of additional money or extra money from the state, they're really dependent on being friends with the government, and that means they also have to pay back when it comes to elections. I think the social media element is one of the most interesting ones currently because it was, as it was mentioned, the Hungarian state and Hungary, I think it was Peter Krekó in one of the previous panels mentioning that even Europe-wide, Fidesz and both the Hungarian state were among the biggest spenders in Europe on political ads. They were practically day and night present on the feeds of people with different type of messages. This has been to some extent limited, but I would also say it has very much changed in a sense that it's less political ads also, although as said, they're sneaking through and they're still there. So Facebook isn't doing that much to really limit political ads. So it's still there, but I think it's more influencer content and pages that have been kind of grown over the years to 100K, 200K big pages of politicians, and or even media sites that normally would just publish their news on their Facebook pages, practically act in this period as propaganda machines, and you can see the same types of messages and same videos appearing all throughout the internet. What's relevant, I think, here as well is that the government party actively set up little circles of citizens who are trained to post. So they are investing money in more community organizing for having people who create organic content and act as trolls or act as commenters on various websites or various Facebook pages. But also I think what we've observed recently is that the government is proactively trying to undermine the TTPA because still, I mean, that could mean the TTPA would mean that if there would be proper authorities that go after implementing TTPA and allowing or help helping the enforcement of that regulation than all these things happening around social media, which are at the end political advertisements. That would have a consequence. I think it really is important in the case of influencer content that is totally not monitored, but is really happening. And currently there is a motion at the Hungarian Constitutional Court where basically the ombudsperson, backed by the government, tried to have the Constitutional Court saying that basically the TTPA is against the Hungarian legislation, so it doesn't have to be enforced. So the government actively helps also with legislative tools to ensure impunity for those who are basically illegally campaigning in favor of Fidesz. And there is something very similarly, so this type of active deregulation or active, watering down of legislation is a very common thing in Hungary. I think one instance where it happened in autumn or the end of the year with the very same purpose was the case of proxies. So the government invests through various funding schemes a lot of money in supporting civil society, especially local civil society. However, these groups in many cases are not really existent in the everyday lives as a normal civil society organization, but become really active before and around the elections. And of course, they are echoing the messages of the government party. So these civil society organizations are huge beneficiaries of public funding schemes for NGOs, which are of course not accessible for independent NGOs. And the government, after there were some reports about how this kind of, or how the funds are abused for political campaign, made legislative changes and changes in the funding structure. One was that there is a law that forbids political campaigning from this kind of from public funds. So it was it was changed into an indirect support scheme, that it's not anymore the government entity managing the funds, but an outsourced entity where they created this loophole so that restriction doesn't apply anymore. And the other case is that there was also an amendment to the whole reporting of these funding schemes and or the funds, which really makes reporting super easy for them. So absolutely no details and detailed reporting required. So there's gonna be no evidence for what the funds have been used. So let's say even in a case that there's a change in the government, or there would be an institutions that would really want to go after the use of these endless amounts of funds distributed locally, then that wouldn't be possible. And I would say, apart from these proxies, of course, the state is kind of the biggest actor. So public resources are used in sometimes creative, sometimes absolutely non-creative ways. I think one shocking thing recently was the role of let's say state actors such as the National Bank, who started to spread advertisements, billboard advertisements, media advertisements all around the country, simply with the message that the country is doing well, there is stability. So not directly partisan messages, but obviously everyone knows what they're talking about. And again, a lot of money, millions going into the campaign through that, uncontrolled. One, I think even, I would definitely put it in a playbook for authoritarian or wannabe authoritarian leaders, was a scheme recently reported on, is how the national lottery company or gambling company is investing or organizing concerts all around the country, which you could believe that it's simply about entertaining people or helping communities to have some events around them. But it very soon turned out that all these events happen in places where Fidesz is lagging behind compared to the opposition. So they practically picked those parts of Hungary and those areas of Hungary where they thought, okay, we need to do some additional campaigning, we need to put their money and bring national celebrities to concerts so that people go out. And of course, at most of these events, the messages of the government are echoed, are turning out as, you know, fundamental elements of the events. And then you have the institutions themselves. I think local governments are key actors in doing these campaigns, but you could also see that tricks are even done that leaders of government offices actively campaign in favor of the government party, and in order to circumvent the rules that, you know, you need to show impartiality as a, you know, government employee, they are put on the lists of the government party as, like, you know, last but one person. So probably they would never end up in the parliament, but just as, you know, becoming someone who is running at the elections, their right to or their freedom of speech expands, so no one can really ask them to, or it's impossible to practically investigate them for using their mandate, their state position for campaigning. So altogether, I think that there is really a panopticon of ways how this government channels money, state resources, even knowledge, even using the police if needed for, you know, campaign purposes. So the entire government machine is favoring and supporting Fidesz, and I think all that leads to that saying that Zalán quoted, is that, you know, elections in Hungary are always labeled as free but not fair. I think these examples pretty much showed what's behind that in a broader environment. And of course, regarding the oversight, we have in Hungary captured institutions. It would be, let's say, the State Audit Office that is mainly responsible for monitoring political finance. Its leader is clearly a person linked to the government party, and you can see that all the decisions of these institutions always hit on the opposition and benefit the government party. There are, of course, legislative loopholes and legislative problems that favor the government party or make it harder for the State Audit Office to really do its job. But we also have observed that there wasn't a single time when the State Audit Office really came out with thorough recommendations on how to reform, let's say, the legislative framework of political finance in Hungary in order to, you know, have sound rules and sound implementation that would be necessary for fair elections. So altogether, I think the whole government machine and the way how this country currently works, you know, with its captured institutions, it's a super unlevel playing field, an unequal race. And it won't change until there isn't, you know, a government that would want to really change it. And unfortunately, you know, throughout, I mean, even if we go back for the times before Fidesz, it was never in the interest of any political party to establish a really fair system. So I think if there's a government change coming, or if it's going to be a change of government in April, that's going to be a really good test of integrity of the new government, whether they are ready to touch this system and introduce strong standards and strong rules for how not to abuse state resources for the campaign, and how to have, you know, fair rules for and equal chances for those running at the election.
Thank you very much. And it's time for a Mentimeter exercise to poll the opinions of our audience. and I ask the help of my colleagues to start the Mentimeter. We will have 4 questions with different options of answering. There will be the first question where it's only possible to select one option. So please scan the QR code and then you can enter the question section. And the questions read, which form of election fraud you consider the most prevalent in your country. There are 4 options, of which you can only select one: vote buying, coercion of voters, manipulating voter rolls, and chain voting. So the answers are coming in, and once we will have the results, I will ask for the quick reactions of our panelists regarding the outcome. At the moment, vote buying and coercion are doing equally, almost equally. We still have over half a minute, so I urge the members of the audience who are responding to cast their vote so that we see their opinions. Látod, hogy még forgassak rajta? And it's over. We have 15 responses, and the most goes 9 actually, so it's 16 vote buying. And even though I'm not seeing the online members of the panel, my online panelists now, but it's clear that you are also aware of the response. So quickies from all of you. What's your take on this outcome? Does it resonate with your experience or impression? Who would wish to start? There is no order now. But if no one wishes, I can appoint, of course, the first respondent. So, Lucia, you are still with us?
Yes, of course.
Yes, thank you. So, just quickly.
Well, as I mentioned, in Czech Republic, I think that we are not, seeing that much of the vote buying. So I would say that for us it would be rather the coercion of voters. But it's a question: what do you see as a coercion? If intimidation with some potential outcomes of the elections is considered a coercion. I think in the last campaigns there were the narratives that, like, if you vote for this party it means war. If you vote for this party it means your personal bankruptcy, increase in all the prices. I think this very harsh rhetoric is it can lay on the voters as some sort of coercion, but we don't see it as someone in a sense that someone would drag you to the polling station and force you to vote for a specific party.
Thank you. And to Zolán and to Wojciech, I have the same question. What is your guess? So those 9 respondents who indicated vote buying as the most prevalent risk are mainly coming from Hungary, or they are mainly coming from Poland? What is your guess on that?
So I put coercion of voters to vote a certain way. I think vote buying is probably the most blatant way that can be the most detected and the most kind of obvious road that happens. But our experience is that in a very big number of rural communities, there is this kind of shared understanding that unless you vote for Fidesz, you are going to lose your, for example, public work options, or the town or village is going to lose a lot of state funding. And it's questionable if this is something that some Fidesz officials are telling individuals, or if this is just a conclusion people may get from the Fidesz campaign messaging or state media propaganda. But I think just the fact that this is the rationale for a lot of people for voting a certain way, I think that is already can be considered a coercion. And I think this vote buying, this is what happens on an individual level, but this coercion happens in a collective level.
Thank you, Wojciech. Quickly, you believe this 9 respondents are representing more Poland or more Hungary?
I think they represent Hungary much more. The public opinion data in Poland shows that there is, especially in these circumstances today, there is less of a perception of such direct malpractice.
Okay, thank you. Now I ask for the second question of the Mentimeter, which is a multiple option possibility. In your consideration, what other factors do most likely threat or influence the fair elections in your country? And there are again 4 options. First of them is undue influence by Russia, a topic that has already been discussed in the morning panels, but I think we ought not to abandon this. The second one, funds of unclear or undisclosed origin, significant difference between competing parties' resources, access to media, finances, and finally, the misuse of state resources. Time is running out slowly. And I think we are over. So if I'm good in reading these minuscule letters. To my astonishment, it's not Russian influence that outcompeted the other potential threats, but the misuse of state resources. And again, we can make a round quickly to check with whose beliefs and impressions does this resonate. But of course, you are invited, Lucia and Wojciech, also to speak of how important asset your country, your government is regarded by Putin and Russia, how deeply Russian influence was experienced. So perhaps Wojciech, you can start with a quick round of response.
Sorry, my mic. I mean, it very much aligns with the points that I made earlier in my commentary. And my attribution to the misuse is largely the irregularities is attributing the main problem to the misuse of public services, state resources for campaigning purposes of the parties. But I think also in this question you did not exclude, it was not one choice but a multiple choice question. So one does not necessarily, sometimes it's simply hard to determine which one is which, and whether by misuse of public resource you're also in a way helping the adversary or the enemy. In the case of communication from public media, for instance, we have clearly had examples, and in Hungary a systemic problem of channeling the messages of the main Kremlin propaganda channels. So it's not a clear cut.
Yeah, well, it's not black and white. We all know that's 50 or something other kind of shades of gray. Lucia, does it reflect the Czech experience?
Well, from how I read the situation, I would make a bit different, preferences in the voting. But it's fair to say that I think in Czech Republic we've seen like all four of these factors. What I would maybe raise to a higher relevancy is the significant difference between competing parties' resources, because as you probably know, our current and already former Prime Minister Babiš is a billionaire. He owned one of the largest media outlets in the Republic. He already sold that one, actually to another oligarch. But the thing is that this new owner is also having his some political views and some agenda. So I would say that this is quite important. As I mentioned before, the Babiš party is running pretty much the all the time going campaign, investing, I wouldn't say limitless money, but a huge amount of finances to run the campaign, and they are dominating the space currently. As for the Russian influence, what we've seen in the last elections, which was sort of surprising, but I think I have an answer for that, is that there was expectation that the disinformation will move the election results a bit more, with some specific disinformation outlets pushing some narratives through to the campaign. But I think and we actually didn't see it that much. The reason behind that, as far as like what I think personally, how I read the situation is that the two far-right parties who actually got to the parliament and are in coalition with the Babish's party, they are actually, adopting the disinformation narratives and pushing it themselves. So there's no need for third actors to actually push the narratives forward because they are carrying it for them.
Thank you. And not out of impoliteness, but this time I will skip my Hungarian colleagues and panelists because I think they have asserted their opinions in regard this specific question. Instead, let us jump to question number 3 in the Mentimeter program, which is about the level of confidence in your respective country's legal framework to detect election fraud and offer equal opportunities to parties. So it's a scale from 1 to 5, as in most elementary schools. 5 means a very good score, and 1 means that your trust is very low. And I promise that the Hungarian panelists will get the chance to start with their response. Somewhere in between, with, as far as I can see, it's 2.4, 2.5, so the level of trust is mediocre. Which, if I was to respond to my own question, I would rather say that this reflects largely the experience. Well, let's say hope is overcoming experience. We still have some seconds. Okay, so just as in a previous session's Mentimeter question, the answer lies in between, and you are free to jump on, but as Sándor and Zalán had no chance to speak to the last question, the floor is first yours. Does this reflect your experience? Do you believe that this is more reflecting Hungary or other countries?
Okay, I can start. I would give even lower score, but probably not 0 or not 1, because obviously there are laws that the government is still amending to put even further loopholes into them, or even further lax on legislation. So I think there is still some hold in the framework. But when Lucia was saying that the Czech, if I understood well, political finance rules are, let's say, more or less sound and robust, I was wishing that this could be the case for Hungary. So I think we are definitely, and of course the question is about fraud. Of course, very serious cases are uncovered, and we saw also examples of consequences there. But basically, I think the framework is weak and not enforced. So I would even give a lower score than indicated there.
Any other of my panelists, of our colleagues, to comment on this outcome? Because we still have one question in the Mentimeter, but of course the floor is open to react on this. If none, I ask my colleague to put the final question of the Mentimeter on the board, which invites our audience to put a word or an expression to describe the single most important actions that individuals, citizens, NGOs can take to prevent election fraud in the next election cycle. So what is the most important thing that you believe should be taken, should be made? Well, guys, I know it has been a long session with over 90 minutes, but still, don't let us down. Otherwise, I will need to ask the same question from our panelists. We have an activist who believes in strikes and trade unions. I wonder if she or he is Hungarian. No, I doubt, actually. Once we are over with this session, we shall make a screenshot to preserve these ideas and channel them into our anti-election fraud activities as very brave and good ideas, sources of inspiration. So time's up, and I'm thanking my audience, but before saying goodbye, I ask for really a 30 seconds per panelist reaction about these responses. Lucy, I see your face on the screen, so please take the floor as first respondent, first reactor.
Thank you. Well, I think that all the answers are relevant. For us, the next election cycle is quite far, but we've been under some attacks from the new government. So I believe that but the answer is still the same, exactly. Participate, monitor, educate. It's always the same.
Thank you. Wojciech?
Yeah, I just don't want to sound like all the same. Just do more. To retain agency, you need to participate. And I think what you need to do here, and which is missing, is to innovate and think of how to be a step ahead in addressing whatever is being observed. I believe there is always quite a level of frustration when you discover new forms of fraud and you need to catch up while this is happening. Why not thinking in terms of risk, crisis prevention, mechanism, foresight, looking ahead of what bad things might be developed in order to be able to react them in advance or even prevent them. I think that point is missing on the table.
Thank you. So, being innovative and preventive. Zalán, your final remarks?
Well, I also cannot add much more than what was already said. Informing the voters, I think, is probably the most important thing one can do. Regarding innovation, I just want to add one, I think, positive example of that. There is in the Hungarian election, there is this mobile app that has been developed called Hamis X, basically means fake X, which basically is made for people who might be blackmailed to vote a certain way and take a photo of their ballot. And this is an app which basically creates a fake photo of a ballot with an X in whatever place. And that can be shown instead of your real vote to show someone that you voted for, but you're being blackmailed to. I think this is, for example, a good example for innovation.
This is double lying.
Yes.
White lying, let's say.
Yeah.
Sándor, the final words?
Yeah, I agree with what has been said. If I want to be even more broad and talk about really prevention, is that, it's reestablishing trust in the democracy so that people really believe that elections are kind of a sacred thing in a democracy, and you don't even think that, you should win by violating the rules or be fraudulent at the elections. Obviously, on the ground, it's the practices that have been listed and are crucial to detect when it's happening.
Well, thank God that Sándor, you said the low-hanging fruit to make elections fair enough. Thank you for your participation. A great and big virtual applause to my panelists. And before I say goodbye to the audience of this panel and invite them to join the next one, I also have to tell that we have an EU survey exercise, which is shown on the screen, just as at the end of the previous panel. If you scan the QR codes, you enter the exercise, the survey field. There is a copy-paste exercise at the beginning to identify in the survey which panel, which event you are giving feedback on, and please fill in the form so that we learn how we can perform even better than we made efforts to achieve this afternoon. And this is the end of the third panel of our conference. The next panel starts at 5 p.m. sharp. So the reason for the big gap here is that this will be an offline panel with the panelists present in the room, but the panel will be streamed, so you can stay online, and you are encouraged to do so, because we will have esteemed political scientists and analysts to discuss the current situation in the running up to Hungary's elections due on April 12th. Thank you very much, and stay tuned with us.